Welcome to the Thriving on Purpose podcast, where we teach Christian entrepreneurs how to build a strong foundation of faith, growth, and skill to lead and thrive on purpose in life and business. And now, here are your hosts, certified coaches Elisabeth and Sebastien Richard.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Thriving on Purpose podcast. This week, it's for the ladies. This week, we're going to talk about something for mompreneurs. And by no means, if you're a guy, don't shut the station, don't change the dial. Stay tuned, because your wife might really benefit from this episode, and you might find some great glimpses for yourself as well, as I did when we studied this subject. But we're going to talk about I guess we could call it controversial, Lizzie? A controversial Bible passage, which is called Proverbs 31.
Yes.
If there is a Bible passage that has been abused, misused, scrutinized, hated by some women, it's Proverbs 31. And we're going to delve into it from an angle that has never been done, anyway, for us. I kind of read it with new eyes this week, and found some really good gems, alongside Elisabeth, of course, for moms, for mompreneurs, for women, for wives, that have to do with entrepreneurship. So, let's dig in, Liz. Let you go right ahead. The floor is all yours. This is for the ladies. This is one for the ladies. And we know it's going to bless you gals out there, you mompreneurs, you kingdom mompreneurs out there, but also your husbands. So let's go. Let's dig deeper.
Exactly. So I decided that I really wanted to focus on this because there are so many different aspects of what a mompreneur should look like in the Christian realm as a kingdom entrepreneur woman. And Proverbs 31, this chapter I've heard so many different kind of angles through the years in different denominations of churches. And it's funny because now that we're entrepreneurs for a couple of years now that we reread this verse, we understand things in a different way. And we want to bring some of that to light so that you can be encouraged. And I also want to talk to you about different things that I struggled with as a mompreneur starting out in the very beginning of my journey, when God was showing me what an entrepreneurial mom looks like. So there's a lot of things that I learned from those seasons of different things that I tried, and I want to basically give you those insights as well. So we're going to dive into this chapter, and we're going to really dissect it so that we understand it properly, because this is really the standard that we are supposed to live up to as kingdom women, as mompreneurs.
But before we dive in, Liz, could you comment on, as you were growing up and in Bible school and when you heard teachings about that, how it was taught? How was Proverbs 31 portrayed? What the image that came up in your mind as you were taught that growing up? What image came to your mind as this ideal woman that is described there?
Yeah, so I was raised, as some of you know, in the church. So I was attending Sunday school. I was dedicated, consecrated to God in my church. We believed in that when I was a baby, and then got baptized, and I did, basically the traditions and everything that is taught in Pentecostal churches. And then my parents, they started embracing the Baptist religion, and so I learned a lot of their theology as well. And I went on to study 1 year at Bible college to get my diploma, which gave me a good doctrine, a good sound understanding of a lot of things in Scripture. And I had a course in that Bible school where they talked to us about Proverbs 31, and what what this Christian woman is supposed to look like. And I always had this image, whether it was from church, even from the different churches I did afterwards. I always had this image that she's this little lady that doesn't talk much, that her husband adores because, she washes his feet, and she takes care of her family. She gets up super early and does everything for her family that you can think of.
Stay-at-home mom.
She's a stay-at-home mom. She's super
dedicated.
wise with her money. The way they made it sound was that she was like taking her pennies and like cutting them in half and being like, I have to make, bread out of this, and I have to sew these kids' socks and, make everything super, super functional because we don't have much. And I'm wise with my little bit of money, and I'm wise with, with the standards that I'm supposed to live up to.
So it's kind of like an 1800s farming family, poor.
Yeah, and she is
woman.
close to God, and she reads her Bible a lot, and she's this faithful woman that her husband looks at her and goes, wow, she's amazing, and I couldn't live without her, and she's just wonderful, right? Because they talk about that their family loves her and this and that. So I always had this very Baptist-y vision of what she was supposed to look like.
Don't be offended if you're Baptists. I mean, I was Baptist. And it's just the way we were taught.
Exactly. And so, not that anything's wrong with that. I mean, if you don't have much, it's super smart to be a good steward of your money. But when we really dive deep and we learn and analyze the scripture, we understand that God is asking for women to step up to the plate and be mompreneurs and have this wisdom about how they invest and use their money
and their time,
that it's not just up to the man to do these things.
Yes.
And as we dive in this, I love the fact that she is so wise that her husband admires her, and he also trusts in her ability to buy fields and to use the money wisely, right? And the different things. So we're going to read the Bible passage and we're going to talk about it.
So basically what you're saying is that we saw only half the picture.
Yeah, so
in churches, the godliness, the devout.
Yeah, in churches that's starting to change a lot, but it's still in certain religions very, very strong that the man is basically the smarts and the woman, she's there to, fix the holes in people's, pants and just be good with her hands, bake bread and, homeschool. And that's pretty much it. Take care of your family, and everything else is not really necessary. Right?
And basically what you're saying is that the way we're taught is everything that pertains, or the way we were taught is everything that pertained to income had nothing to do with her.
Exactly.
It was more like saving money, saving a penny, making sure everyone was warm and well fed, and it pretty much stopped there. The picture, even in my mind, it was like, that's how I used to see it. And man, when you really take the time to dig deep in Proverbs 31, how a mind shift that goes like, whoa, the kingdom women need to hear this. This is amazing. And if you're one of these women out there who has been frustrated with Proverbs 31 because perhaps you haven't read it in a long time, or maybe it's one of those passages that might actually ruffle some feathers for some women, depending on how it's taught. And if that's the case, I think it's really, really high time to revisit this passage with new eyes. And that's what we're going to do today.
Exactly, because it's been twisted in different ways, and psychologically, I remember some pastors when I was growing up teaching it in a way that, basically she has no voice, and
she's a slave to her husband and her kids, and
her role is to do what she has to do physically to make sure they have everything, but her input and her insight and her intellectual side doesn't matter, right? And so, and maybe you've been fortunate not to go to a church that taught it this way, but I've been to many different churches, different denominations, and I remember that a lot of women got frustrated with this because they were just like, well, I'm not made to just, not have a voice and shut up about whatever. I feel like I have more to offer than just household tasks, which, by the way, a lot were done by servants in those days as well, right?
Which is pointed out in the passage also. So I'm just going to comment as Elisabeth reads through Proverbs 31. It starts with verse 10. So when I'm going to tell her like to stop if I want to add something, or if she wants to add something, that's good too. So we're just going to go through the passage. It starts at verse 10. Liz?
Yes, and I just want to add before I read, I know that's for some women, this can also be intimidating. A lot of Christian women are intimidated by entrepreneurial women and mompreneurs, and some of them are actually opening their eyes to this basically new movement that's happening in the last years, where women are starting to see, Christian women are starting to see how they can have a bigger role as entrepreneurial women and bless their families in the process. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to add that. So Proverbs 31 verse 10 reads, "A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies."
Stop there. It opens great.
Already?
Yeah, already. Like noble.
It's like already commenting.
No, but noble. The word noble character. Nobles all throughout history were people of standing.
Right.
And then it adds, she is worth far more than
rubies.
Rubies. So in other words, and see, we used to see this as more of a, when you read it with, if I compare how I used to read that and how I read it today, rubies are worth what? They're worth money, right? They're worth money.
It's actually one of the most expensive jewel.
The costliest stones that you can find. So this woman is worth what? She's worth far more than rubies. So if you had a handful of rubies, or this wife, you know that you're going to be better off financially with this wife. So it opens up talking indirectly about finances.
Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value.
So again, verse 11, the husband lacks nothing of value. It doesn't mention here that's because he's working hard or making a killing in business or whatever. It mentions it's basically all around her. So he lacks nothing of value. So again, we see here something that pertains to material goods and having more than enough to get by.
Exactly. And I like the part that it says he has full confidence in her.
Also.
And we know that back in the day, right, how women were
second-rate citizens.
Yeah, they weren't as empowered and basically had no rights. And we know all the basic history of how women were seen and weren't uplifted. And it says that he has full confidence in her, which means in her abilities, and he completely trusts her to do what it is she's supposed to do.
Amen,
which is huge back in the day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So she brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool, flax, and works with eager hands.
Interesting here again. The way I used to read this verse was like she selects wool and works with eager hands. I saw this as her selecting wool and then knitting.
Yeah.
But these seem to be separate when you read them. She selects wool. So that implies, okay, she's out there buying that special kind of wool. Mm-hmm. And then it says she works with eager hands, but she could be doing anything else with eager hands then, because both are not, also wool and flax.
It doesn't say she's making a certain coat or something out of wool.
Exactly. It doesn't go that far. So what does that mean?
We could also understand it as she also does work with eager hands, which means she's not, doing nothing all day. She's either working by selecting wool and flax and administrating all that and taking care of that kind of work, or she's either working with her hands doing things that need to be done.
Eager hands, exactly. She's not lazy. She's got these busy hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She is like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar.
Which implies, here, very interesting, because this implies she's not the typical stay-at-home mom. She's a busy mom. She goes out and brings provision back from afar. So what did that imply? Well, we don't know. Like it's not
buying
specified,
good things,
but it wasn't close by probably, and she was out getting that good stuff and bringing it back to the house.
Exactly, which means like I know that a lot of people portray an image that the stay-at-home mom, the Christian mom, has to be growing a garden and homeschooling and doing all these things, that it's
And nothing wrong with that.
Prerequisite to being godly, to being a Christian woman, and it's not necessarily
way.
okay.
Exactly, it's one way.
It's one way, exactly. It's not better. It's one way that they choose to do it.
Yeah.
She gets up while it is still dark. She provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls.
Boy, that's
interesting.
A
so she wakes up before everybody's awake because obviously she wants to get stuff done in advance so that she maximizes her day.
Exactly.
So she provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls. So she has servant girls that are taking care of her house.
Which is interesting because not everybody had servant girls back in the day.
No.
So that means, again, it opens up with a wife of noble character who can find. She was far worth for more than rubies. So we see there that, okay, all this hard work that she does brings in a lot of income, and it makes them very comfortable and able to hire people, servant girls in her case. So she wakes up while it's still dark. In other words, she has a priority first thing in the morning,
to tend to her family.
To tend to her family first and foremost. And I like that. I love it. That's her priority. It's like, I'm going to take care of the home front first, early in the morning. Why? Because I want to be productive throughout the day. So this is basically the ancestor of Miracle Mornings. Everyone heard about that book, Miracle Mornings?
Well, Miracle Mornings is teaching people to,
get up at 5 and be productive.
Yeah, but it's also talking about personal development and doing these things way earlier so that they maximize their day and start kicking the round running, right? The way I understand this verse is mostly making sure that her family lacks nothing. So she knows what her family needs, and she's extremely organized because she starts with the tasks that she knows she has to do to make sure that even her servant girls don't even have to find food and
everybody's taken
make their
care
own
of.
food. So everybody's taken care of. So that's a high priority. And when women talk to me about being an entrepreneur and doing this, and Liz, how do you have time to do this and have time to do that and whatnot? I am extremely, extremely organized. When I think of my kids and they're going to come home from school, I know exactly what I'm going to do with them. I know exactly it's homework time. I know exactly what is going to work, what's not going to work. I always have a snack prepared. That's just a simple example. And, it's like feed the brain and let's get on with the homework. And then my supper oftentimes is prepared way in advance. It's something like I can just put in the oven, or it's already been in the stove. They come home and I don't even have to touch it. It's just going to cook till supper. Like, you have to, as a mompreneur, you have to be extremely organized if you don't want your family to lack and be like, well, I have to order takeout again, like pizza again, or McDonald's, or, like, that's just the food aspect. But there's a lot of things. There's a lot of chores. There's a lot of things that need to get done. And if you're not in the financial position where you can have somebody coming in and, cleaning your dirty laundry and, doing chores, then you're going to have to do these things to make sure that your family doesn't suffer. And I've seen so many Christian women kind of slack off on these things and say, you know what, I'm doing this business and I'm doing this and that, and it down the road it's for their good, so I'm going to slack off on everything that they really need, and they can just pick up and do what they have to do and kind of deal with it because I'm going to bring home the bacon and I'm going to make money. And down the road, they're going to enjoy, going to trips paid by the company and whatnot. Yeah. So, there's a balance, and you have to have wisdom, because as you can see, as we continue reading, this woman is extremely busy. She's not, she's doing things for her family. She's working with her hands, but she's also wise about her time, and she's organized to make sure that her family is blessed, not cursed because she's an entrepreneur.
Amen. Yeah.
Not like, mom's gone again, or I'm not going to see mom again, or,
and we're not judging, because we know how subtle it can be, that falling into that trap and
the world does a good job of making you feel guilty
Yeah.
if you don't work 60 hours a week on your business, if not 80.
Yeah.
All for the good of your family in 5
Exactly.
years from now.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But-
and in the meantime, well, your family
But that's
doesn't
not
even
real
know
life,
who
and
you
that
are
doesn't
anymore.
last. And people end up in burnouts, and next thing you know, they're divorced, and their families hate them, and it just it spirals out of control. And God doesn't want that for us, right? He wants us to be wise, like the Proverbs woman, organized, and use our heads, not just our hands,
And
right?
notice the order of things. Look, so verse 15 tells us she gets up while it's still dark. She provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls. That's verse 15. Verse 16. So that kind of describes the order or priority of her day.
And another thing I'm going to say about the servant girls is that it's mentioned because it's important. There's a lot of women out there that feel guilty if they do make some income to actually get some help, because it's like there's this bad image that she has to do everything and be the end all be all in her family and grow a garden and be the perfect soccer mom, bake cupcakes and run the business and do the laundry and do all these things, and then they wonder why she's got purple bags under her eyes, and she's resenting her family, and she just gives up at one point,
Good point. Yeah, good point about the servant girl, which is basically
Or
called...
get sick. I've seen a lot of entrepreneur women get very, very sick.
Also.
They burn out. And if you love your wife, you don't want that to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And if you love yourself, a mompreneur that's listening to this, I hope that you're going to have this wisdom to be able to use your money wisely, to what they say, like maximize your time. Quality time with your family is more important than actually doing your laundry, in the sense that if you do have the money to get cleaning done, why the heck would you not use that
It's an
money
investment at that point.
so that you're not as tired and your family, gets what they need, and you have quality time to spend doing fun, quality things with them.
By all means.
Like, there's no pride in cleaning your underwear. Like, you know what?
But-
I don't understand
but-
why some women feel so bad. And, even it makes me laugh, because I was listening to interviews at one point of artists that are musicians, and some of them are Christians and stuff, and they're so shy to say that they actually have help, and some of them pride to say, oh no, we do everything by ourselves, because this is even if we're making lots of money, we think it's really important for our families to see us cleaning toilets in our house and whatnot. I'm sorry, I think it's super, super important to teach your kids how to do chores.
Absolutely.
I have done them all my life. I started doing chores. I was 8 years old and broke many dishes in the process. And I was really not an idiot. When I was 18, I basically could pretty much run a household on my own.
Yeah.
And that's because my mom was very sick, and I had to learn very, very young how to do things. So I'm all for teaching your kids young how to do certain things and be autonomous, so that when they do leave the house at 18, they know what to do, right?
And what I was going to say before all this is amazing how much content you have on this. But so what I was going to say is the priority is definitely her family first.
Yeah.
So she gets up early for that. She takes care of that first. And then the next verse 16. She considers a field and buys it. Hello. I mean, if that is not entrepreneurial, I don't know what is. This is not real estate, but land development. It's this is amazing. I mean, and
well, in this case, it is important real estate, because out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. So she's growing a vineyard because she wants to have wine. Otherwise, why would you grow grapes that can produce wine, right?
Yeah, well, also grapes were just eaten for the sake of grapes, but still.
Vineyard. She plants a vineyard.
Yeah, and see, this is something we back in the day when we'd read that, we kind of read over that, she considers the fields and buys it. Probably her husband gave her permission to get out that day and go buy the fields. That's how I used to read it, right? No, he trusts her fully. So that's her earnings. What she earned, she's getting out with that money. and goes consider the great deal she can have with buying a field and then planting a vineyard in it.
Yeah, and exactly. So you're seeing how she's investing.
Exactly.
Because she's not only buying a field just to own it for the purpose of nothing. She plants a vineyard, which is going to produce fruit to either sell or produce wine, which will give her income.
Even more income.
Right?
Yeah.
So she's wise in her money of how she invests in it, which is comparable to a lot of things today. But real estate, some people like to buy houses or
land and resell it at a better price.
Yeah.
Yeah, finding good deals,
Yeah.
So you want to read the subject?
Yeah, she sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks.
So again, we see she's not lazy. She's vigorous, and she's not afraid of physical labor. In doing all of that, she doesn't shy away from from working physically.
Exactly. So she does apply herself physically. This is what we're understanding, because she is strong. Mm-hmm. Her arms are strong. It's specified. So she's smart with her brain, but also knows how to work her body to do what she has to do.
Doesn't shy away from what's hard physically. And then verse 18. Oh boy, this is so good. She sees that her, and the word used here in the NIV is trading. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. There's a verse in Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, that talks about doing your job in the day, and in the night not being lazy, still doing some other thing that will be profitable for you. So this is her in action right here. So she witnesses that her trading is actually doing, like, it's working. It's profitable, so she's making profits. And her lamp does not go out at night. So in other words, although she got up at 4 or 5 in the morning to get everything ready for her family, and then went out during the day and did all that work, in the evening, she doesn't sit in front of the TV. Although they didn't have a TV back then, she doesn't just sit and do nothing. She is still doing work that is profitable in the evening. So her lamp does not go out at night. So she's busy.
Yeah, so she's looking over all her investments. So what she did, what she bought, what she traded for. She's continuing to put all that into place before she goes to bed.
And the word trading here implies, I was reading a book this week that was talking about that from the perspective of the parable of the talents. How the owner in the beginning of the parable, he gives each according to his ability, and he expects them to go trading. And in the book it was explaining how trading is one of the oldest professions in the Bible. So it was something that was commonly done, and still to this day is done. There's a lot of traders who are very, very wealthy out there. So she's a trader, not a traitor, but a trader, D-E-R. And so she is a skilled trader from the context of this passage.
Yeah, and another thing I want to add to this, when you say her lamp does not go out at night, a woman that's entrepreneurial like this, that does trading, and she's smart with her hands and her money, and she's looking over her whatever she traded, or the goods that she got and whatnot. I think that when they say that her lamp does not go out at night, is that she's also preparing things for the next day. Because if you want to be, if you really want to maximize your days, you have to basically know exactly what you're going to do when you wake up. So there's a lot of things that we can do as entrepreneurs, as women, during the day when our kids are at school. But oftentimes there's also a period at night where you can be very efficient and get your things organized, which are things that you can't always do because your kids, either demand too much of you, or you have to cook, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. That time for me, I found, was very crucial to get organized and say, okay, I'm starting with this, I'm doing that tomorrow. The kids need that, so I'm going to prepare this tonight to save time tomorrow. So there's organization there. And I know that for some women, that tend to be a bit lazy, this is a problem, because they just want to watch TV and veg at night. But if that's your mindset, unfortunately, you won't get much done the next day. Mm-hmm. Because those, even if it's just 1 hour that you take in that evening to get your stuff organized, you will be way more productive the next day, and your kids will miss less of whatever it is they need if you're more organized. So that's why it's very important to plan out your day. Look at your day in advance, look at your week in advance, and especially the night before. I always look at the next day to see where I'm at with different projects, different things I want to do, because I did notice that if I just go, I'm going to look at my agenda in the morning, I'm not going to be as productive as if I've planned it out the night before to know exactly where I'm going to start. And, looking at my day, I know, okay, the kids need this, the kids need that. I need to do that in advance because I won't have enough time tomorrow, this and that. And when I do those things, my day is super maximized, super profitable, and it actually goes somewhere. I actually get something done and have more a sense of accomplishment near the end of the week. So, you might have those days where you just feel like doing nothing. Like for me, it's Friday night. I just cut myself some slack and say, I'm not doing anything, and Saturday night as well. But, Sunday night, I'm back to it. For me, that's my first day of the week. And I start planning, I start doing things to make sure that everybody has everything they need and everything is ready to go Sunday night, so that Monday we're not like, like, where are we going? What's happening? Lunches aren't made, blah, 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 blah,
And then the next verse, it says, in her hand, she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. So what we see here is she's not afraid to get hurt by doing stuff. She is brave. She basically that's like saying she grabs the bull by the horns and gets it done, right? And verse 20, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. Very key verse here. There is no prosperity without generosity. Mm-hmm. And this woman has a generous and giving spirit. She thinks of the needy. When she reaps a profit, she thinks of those who don't have much, and she keeps some aside for them. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. Extending your hand is a way of saying she gives. When we give, we extend our hand, we open it up, and the other person can take what's in their hand.
Exactly, because unfortunately there are some women, there are some people that just, won't go down this road, and, for whatever reason, sometimes it's their circumstances, they're very unfortunate, poor, and needy, and God does call us to help those people and to be generous and to give, whether it is to give to the body of Christ, to give to other Christians that are in more need than you are, or to organizations. It's super important.
Or just poor people in your community.
Yeah.
Soup kitchens and stuff like that.
And a lot of people think that they have to be super rich to start making an impact and give a lot. And honestly, sometimes it could just be, some clothes that your kids don't need anymore, that you spot a lady that, maybe her son goes to the same school as you, and they both would wear the same size, and you can see that kid doesn't have, what he needs. You could offer to give your hand-me-downs, and a lot of women will say yes to it. I've done it many times.
And speaking of clothes, I love verse 21 because why? Well, first of all, we're Canadian, so we get this verse. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. Now, this is another powerful verse that, back at the time, I was like, okay, so she makes sure that they all have clothes on their back. No. Clothed in scarlet. Scarlet is the color of kings. Okay, it's a color of royalty. It's a color of opulence. Mm-hmm. So this verse, if we were to paraphrase it in a Canadian or maybe a Minnesota way, because it's cold in Minnesota as well. So if we were to paraphrase it for today's people, it'd be like something like, and when it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed with North Face coats. In other words, North Face, I don't know if you guys know this company because maybe you live in the South and there's no need for that, but the North Face, they make amazing winter coats, probably the highest quality that you can find out there. Mm-hmm. That and Canuck, also in Canada, is another good brand. So the scarlet thing here means not just that that they're clothed, but they are very, very well clothed.
Yeah, so it says she has no fear, right?
No fear.
So she's not worried that they're going to get cold and get sicknesses and, it's going to be a problem. So she makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple.
Again, we see colors here, like herself, the way she is adorned. See, I used to read the Proverbs 31 woman and saw her like, she's so humble. She must wear rags, and for some reason it's like I was blinded to seeing how she was clothed herself, because we tend to think because this woman is not overly preoccupied with her appearance, she's not overly preoccupied with it, but that doesn't mean she wants to dress in rags.
Yeah, because they focus on she makes coverings for her bed, so she's working again with her hands.
Yeah, but see, we forget the other part that says that she herself is clothed in fine linen and purple. So again, and when we see, even today, to this day, when we see people finely clothed, automatically we esteem them. We think, oh, that's a person who makes money. That's a person who's somebody. That person's somebody. Look at how they're dressed. So there's nothing wrong with that. But what I like about the context of the passage, as we will see as we keep advancing, this woman, it's not her priority. Appearances are not her priority. Mm-hmm. But her soul, her heart, her tongue, and taking care of her family, taking care of business, making sure everything rolls perfect.
But you know what I like here is that she finds the importance to make coverings for her bed. So she sees the value in making her own quality bedding.
Yeah.
And yet it doesn't say, that she's clothed in fine linen and purple. So she obviously thinks that it's okay for her to wear nice things as well.
Exactly.
Whether she made it or not. It's interesting that they put both of those things in that phrase.
Because they're kind of like, in a way, opposites, right? Because usually women who are trying to save money would make their own coverings for their beds.
And some people have made like dresses out of draperies,
Yeah, exactly. And yet they show like, okay, she's frugal in some things. So she makes coverings for her bed. She makes them herself. Mm-hmm. And yet she is clothed in fine linen and purple. So she's frugal in some things, but in other things she's just like, you know what? I'm somebody. I deserve this, and it's okay.
Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land.
Again, we see how all of that hard work and wisdom and entrepreneurial spirit on the part of the wife reflects so well on the husband. You know how they say behind every great man there's a woman? Well, there's a great woman. I should say there is a great woman, but they say there's a woman, right? And it's not just any woman who can make a man great like that. I think it's really like what's great about this passage is how she herself is so great. That's why he is seen as someone extremely respectable.
So I think that's really important to mention that, her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. A lot of women don't see how important their role is when your husband has everything he needs. And some women think it's just physical, or that it's just, food, shelter, clothing, mm-hmm. the necessities. But there's a lot implicated in that for a man to become of that stature, and to be respectable. That means that, he thinks like he has a lot of wisdom and he's being cared for. So, in marriage, there's many different aspects, and you have to see how, it's not just about neglecting you cleaned his underwear. It's about everything else in the spiritual form and in the intellectual form. I've seen a lot of couples not come together because they're not able to work together, in the sense that their goals are so completely different and they're not able to connect because what they're doing is so completely different. Mm-hmm. So that can happen, if you're married to another entrepreneur, if you're both entrepreneurial and you both have your own thing. And that can also happen if, you have this mentality where you're just this Christian mom that has to stay home and just take care of her family and do nothing else. And he's got the entrepreneurial spirit. Then that can, have an effect on your couple as well, because you just don't meet intellectually. You don't meet in that way. And this is what I like about, as we continue to read, is that, he respects her intellectual sense of how she invests her money and how she's noble and he trusts her and all. But he's also a man of stature, and he's also respectable. So they work hand in hand, and they're actually a very strong couple that knows their different roles but comes together in a good way, So I think it's important to keep that in mind as well. And it says that she makes linen garments and sells them.
Hello.
And supplies the merchants with sashes.
So, again, entrepreneurial spirit. Hello. I mean, she makes linen garments and sells them. So that's basically, she's running a linen garment business, So far we've seen, and I find that fascinating because someone once said that if you're going to be wealthy, you need 5 streams of income in your life. 5 different streams of income. And this woman, I don't know, we didn't count them yet, but we underlined many different streams of income.
Right.
She does real estate. She selects wool and flax.
She's growing a vineyard.
She's growing a vineyard, so that's another stream of income. Anyway, we didn't
She's saving her money by making her bed.
She's frugal,
and
also
doing different
some
things that save money.
So there's great wisdom in Proverbs 31 when it speaks about this ideal woman.
And if she's making her own linen garments, and it says and sells them, she's making money that way, and supplies the merchants with sashes. That means that she's doing, producing quite a bit to be able to supply the merchants with sashes.
And what's a sash anyway?
It's a piece of garment that's not finished. It's
So that's interesting. So is that how do they?
It's like a square. Let's say a big square of a material.
But how do they call it? Is it not upselling, but when you make deals? Yeah, you're a supplier, and so that's another interesting.
That means you have so much linen that basically you can make refined garments and sell them to ladies that have money, right? Mm-hmm. That want, because back in those days, the hand skills were important.
Yeah.
And if you made nice garments, the ladies that had more money would go to see those the ladies from the towns to get, either someone to make it for them, and they buy the sashes, right? And they would say, you're going to make this for me, and I want this and this and this. Or they could, like in this case, she's made the dress and she says, I'm making this beautiful thing. This is for sale. But I have so much of this linen as well. I'm going to also
supply merchants.
Give
them a good price.
So that they can sell to other people, and those that want to make their own dresses can make their own dresses. So do you see? So she's using her business in both ways, with her hands to make quality goods and supplying.
This is so
merchants.
good. And in verse 25, I like the play on words they made, because they're talking about garments and sashes. And then verse 25, she is clothed with strength and dignity. And I love that last part. She can laugh at the days to come. Other renditions say she laughs at the future. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? That basically means that she has such a strong trust in not only her own ability, but in God, obviously, from the context of the whole passage, that she has no fear of the future. She is fearless. And we've spoken many, many times at Thriving on Purpose on how fear handicaps us, crippling, and it's such a thing that is to be, that we need to get rid of as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and so there's the spiritual aspect of, she knows that God's going to provide for her needs. And, God has created in every human being the power of creating their own wealth. So she's tapped into that.
She has.
And she's figured out a way to benefit her family with the wealth of her hands and what she's producing and her smarts and all that, to be able to use it wisely so that money comes, and she's not worried about eating tomorrow. She's not worried about freezing or not having what she needs. So there's a spiritual and physical aspect of that. So she speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue.
So again, we see how this woman, she's not only a doer, but she's also very deep. She's got this connection with God, obviously, because you can't speak wisdom and have faithful instruction with your tongue unless you are. And so she has that. She has that connection with God. She's faithful, she's devout, and she loves the Lord, and she fears the Lord as well.
Exactly. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness.
So again, that's kind of like a repeat of what we've seen so far. She's a hard worker, extremely hard worker. She takes care of her house, and I love that. She watches over the affairs of her household. I think it was the first penny in America when they started issuing their own money in America. The first penny, and I'd have to look it up historically, so don't take my word for this, but I think I saw this. The instead of saying "In God We Trust," it said "Mind your business."
Yeah, we looked it up long time
Mind
ago.
your business. That's what it said on the first penny. And I think it was
and it doesn't mean like
Benjamin Franklin who found it.
Mind your business.
No, yeah, exactly. It means like be preoccupied with your business, what you're doing. Yeah. And that's what she does. That's what this woman does.
It doesn't mean bug off.
No, it doesn't mean bug off. So like today it means more, don't bother me. But back in the
Here's
day,
money, don't bother me.
Yeah, no way, son, you bother me. But back in the day, it meant, look after your own affairs and make them fruitful.
Yeah.
And that's what she does. She watches over the affairs of her household.
But I like this because there's two things that are very important to underline here. A lot of entrepreneurial women are kind of clueless about what happens in their own home because they're so busy working outside of the home, running around, going on planes, doing all kinds of different things. And it's very important to understand that there's a time for these things. If you have young children or kids that need upbringing at a specific, whether they're young, like kids or adolescents, you need to know what's going on in your household. You need to know, how is I don't know, your husband disciplining your children? What happened? What happened in school? Is there anything, that you need to, because you have to remember that the Proverbs woman is wise. She's also going to instruct, right? Mm-hmm. She has faithful instruction on her tongue, which is the verse before. So that's used for something. She's not instructing the cattle in the field. She's instructing her own family.
Exactly.
Her own
children.
Her own children. Yeah. So she's aware of what's going on in her household. And I find that that's one of the biggest traps that destroys the families today is that some women that are mompreneurs, sometimes will care more for their team that they're trying to help build a business, or
then they do their own household.
Yeah, or
we've seen that.
Yeah, or they're just disconnected. And I think it's not, I'm not casting any stones. I think that a lot of women just feel like they have to be there for their teammates, and if they don't, then their business is going to crumble. And
that's a scarcity mentality. That's coming from a bad place, thinking like that.
Yeah, but I've seen it, and it happens. And a lot of women think, if they're not like hovering over their business and making sure everything's happening, and they're watching over their employees and making sure that, instead of trusting more their employees and putting systems into place so that they don't have to be that much implicated, they want to hover and control everything. Well, oftentimes what happens is if you put too much energy there, you have less energy in your home, and then you kind of slack off and say, it doesn't matter, I don't have to be there for this, and you kind of lose touch, and you don't stay as well connected with those relationships that are really, really important in your family. And that's crucial because I've heard many Christian men, businessmen say that to be successful, the household has to run really well before you can be successful in your business.
Amen to that.
So the wheels have to turn properly in your household, and watch over the affairs, make sure that everything's going properly emotionally, and all those things, that you're there for their needs, and not just physically, so that you don't have problems that you never saw coming. Right?
Yeah, and I love how the whole thing comes down and ends to show us how everything that she's been doing. We've seen how this woman is very busy on so many fronts. And here's how it closes. It's really amazing. It says, her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. So see how the praise come first and foremost from her household, her husband, her children. And then they say, many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And again, we see how that woman's priority is fearing the Lord. If, as someone has once said, that if you fear God, you won't have anything else to fear. This woman has understood that. She applies it, and as a result, everything she does is fruitful, and her husband and children are the first people to benefit from and to praise her for it. But I love how the text of verse 31 ends, and here's, I'm going to make a point and you're going to love it. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works, plural, bring her praise where? At the city gate. So now we're coming full circle. Here's what's interesting, because it says that her husband, in verse 23, her husband is respected where?
At the city gate.
At the city gate. And now at the end, what do we see? We see that her works bring her what? Praise where? Also at the city gate. So she's on equal footing. At the end, we see that she gets the same respect and value as her own husband because of everything that she does with such like amazing results, basically. So this passage is so amazing. It shows us a woman in such a different light than, and dare I say it, the way we've been taught religiously, how, you know, the woman should stay at home and bake bread and do her prayers and all these things are fine. But if that's the only thing you do and you neglect the rest, you're not maximizing. You're not maximizing who you are,
exactly, and what God's given you to work with, because you do have the power to create wealth. God gave you a brain, and He gave you a different, things that you're supposed to use that brain for.
Amen.
And so we can see, if He's praising her, and her children are calling her blessed, we're talking about she's surpassing their needs, right? Because you don't necessarily praise somebody. Like I know for my kids, if they're praising me about something, it's because I surpassed their expectations.
It's true.
They're like, oh my gosh, Mom, you did this? Like, wow.
You cooked this or you did that? Wow. And we're amazed.
Because you're looking beyond the basic needs, and you're saying, I'm going to provide this and this and this because I know it's going to be pleasing to you, and you're going to be blessed by it. And so she's using her intellect, her hands, and her investments and all that in return to really over deliver and bless her household first and foremost, right? And also everybody, they benefit by that wheel that's going round and
people
round.
Aren't blind, and that's why she's so respected at the city gates afterwards, because people aren't blind. They see that this is not just the husband's doing. He's barely mentioned in the whole passage. They see this woman. They see what so she's praised
for many
at the city gate as well. So she's an upstanding citizen in her community as well. So this is amazing for the time when the epoch when it was written, like you mentioned earlier, in a day when women didn't have the opportunities that they have today. For a woman to be praised like that.
And what's sad is that a lot of entrepreneur women now, more and more, are valued and praised, and that's a good thing. But a lot of them, when you ask questions about their household, about what's really going on behind doors of their, marriages and their children and all that, a lot of them, unfortunately, have, either very bad relationships with their children. Their children feel like they're neglected. Their parents are always on their phone, always too busy for them. Or they have a crumbling marriage because she's just not there present for his needs, and they don't connect because she just doesn't have time for their needs, his needs and the kids' needs. So it's important not to get into this trap where, you get sucked into doing so much either for other people or for your business or whatever it requires, that you forget your family and their needs first and foremost. And also understanding that there's different times in your life where, you won't be able to go as fast as the other person that doesn't have kids. And you have to accept that. And you have to say, you know what, it's just for a season. They're growing up. Right now, they need me for this, that, and that. And I'm going to be there for them. And even if it means I'm going to be a little less, out in the spotlight or noticeable doing a certain thing like I know that I can do. Because, see, the woman that's a mompreneur has an entrepreneurial spirit, knows she can go a lot farther.
Oh, yeah.
But if you go to that much farther, will you regret the fact that you're going to let important things crumble in the process? And that's what you have to understand, is that, yes, you can go and get, the trips, and you can get this and you can get that and have all this glory from your company. But is there going to be a family there to actually support you and actually want to go on the trip?
So what you're saying,
or you can all be there and be totally disconnected?
So what you're saying is basically work at getting the praise of your husband and kids first, and the rest will come in time as you make time for the rest, basically.
I think it's important to there is a time for everything, and quality time with your family and saying no to certain things. Just as the opposite, like some women think it's super important to, bake cupcakes on birthdays and go bring them to the school and be there for soccer practice and do this and do that. And they're so busy in on all these activities that are pertaining to their kids, and they're not making any money whatsoever, and their kids, have to get secondhand this and secondhand that, and they don't have money for lunches and this and that, and they're not doing well financially. They're in the hole, always borrowing on credit, where, if she did focus on different things that, could help financially and do a little less of what doesn't really matter in reality.
Yeah, because
there could be a better balance.
We live in a world where they over...
It's one or the other. It's either, the soccer moms and the cupcake moms, I call them, that are super in their bubble of, we're gonna live only for our kids and do only stuff for our kids, and we found our value only in this, and we are the best mom because we made this birthday cake by ourselves from scratch, following videos on YouTube, and our kids are super, super happy. Okay, I'm not saying it's a bad thing if you can find the time to do that, but if your focus is only on these things and not on trying to find solutions for financial prosperity, if you're in debt and your husband's losing his mind because he can't pay his bills, it's not gonna, it's not a good balance. Do you see what I'm saying?
And there's a book Kevin Leman, Christian psychologist Kevin Leman, wrote. It was about that. He was basically making a case for parents who overindulge their kids in too many activities that they don't really want or need. Because they feel like they have to keep up with the Joneses.
Because that's what they do. When they reach a certain status, financially, entrepreneurs,
piano
especially,
lessons, soccer, that.
They feel guilty for not being as present. So oftentimes they'll get them enrolled in a bunch of things. Then they're running from one place to another. And the kid, all she wants or he wants just is quality time to talk about their needs and what they are going through in school.
And Kevin Leman made a good case in that book. And I forget the title, but we'll put it in the resources because I think it's a good book for the subject we're talking about. And ironically, I just remembered, we're doing this whole show on Proverbs 31 Mompreneur on Mother's Day, so it's very appropriate. And we really hope this show has added value to you, because us rereading it and it's, you kind of take it for granted. Those popular Bible passages that we kind of know by heart or whatnot, we kind of take them for granted, and we don't maybe reread them as often as we should. But after our entrepreneurial journey and everything we've learned, rereading it now with these eyes, you're like, okay, this is not your typical bread baking, stay-at-home mom who just stays at home and does,
and
food
we give these examples. We're not against,
and we're not dissing it. I mean, there's some great moms who did that, and who raised a great generation of people because they did that.
We just want you to see
different times,
the different picture of certain things, elements that are important, especially in the years that we are living in, that are very, very busy. Entrepreneurial moms have a lot of pressure, a lot of businesses putting a lot of pressures. They teach women entrepreneurs as if they were a man that had no kids, And it just isn't realistic for a kingdom woman entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I think there's another point that we need to reemphasize before we close this podcast. We've been making a big case about how trying to encourage moms who haven't been enough entrepreneurial, or also saying to moms who have been entrepreneurial overly because they were neglecting their families. But I think it's all about balance, right? I mean, this woman is perfectly balanced. That's why she epitomizes in the Bible the perfect wife, right? Or perfect mom and perfect woman. But balance is everything. I think being overly, especially because if you're listening to us, you're entrepreneurial, right? So don't feel guilty for being entrepreneurial, because the way we've been taught in religion is, if you're going to be a good mom and a good wife, you're going to stay at home. And it's been trending. I mean, many women have been working out of the house now because they saw that one salary usually wasn't enough. And so, but for some women, it's still been something that's been tugging at their heartstrings. They've still been feeling that guilt over, let's say, my mom raised me, she was at home. And now I have no choice but to work outside the home, or to be an entrepreneur, or to do that. And they feel like they're neglecting their family. Well, you shouldn't have that guilt, because look at Proverbs 31 woman, the way we looked at it today. This woman was entrepreneurial in a day when, most women were fine just being at home and letting their husbands do all of the income.
Unless your husband is making a very good salary, the truth is that living the way our parents used to live, where the husband was a sole provider, is pretty much gone.
Yeah, these days are over.
Yeah, those days are over. Unless he has a good business and he's thriving financially, it's not the norm, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of women are found in this situation where they have to bring extra income. So as we end this podcast, I really want to encourage you to see how, the Proverbs 31 woman had a lot of wisdom in the way she, did her business around the schedule of her family, that she didn't leave those priorities. That's the main focus, to be well-grounded and balanced, and to cultivate, to nurture what is super important, because that's your heritage. Your children growing up being the men and women that love Christ and that are doing wonderful things, and probably, catch the entrepreneurial side of you and are going to do other great things for God or for their families, is a really beautiful blessing, right? So it's important to use wisdom into the projects that you're going to do, and to not feel guilty if you can't do it all. A lot of entrepreneurial women feel like they have to bake those cupcakes, and they have to do this and they have to do that, and so they have to be this perfect mom that does everything a stay-at-home mom would do that's not entrepreneurial and be entrepreneurial. So you're gonna have to have wisdom into what's really important and what isn't. There's years that I brought cupcakes for my daughter at school, and there's years that I didn't at all, because I just didn't have time, and it was just, crazy schedules, and things were more important for what I was doing for a bigger purpose. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you have to use that wisdom into what's really important for your kids and what really matters, and not try to always be this perfect mompreneur that, does everything and then some, because you have to remember that a lot of women that you go to school with, that you see in school, that's their main focus, is just to be all about the kids. They don't have this mission, they don't have this assignment from God to do more, to help other human beings to do more. And so if your voice is, for example, to help other women that are going through difficult times, or, maybe it's to fight abuse or fight this or fight that, there's always, ways that kingdom women are so smart about trying to help and add value to others. Well, you're working for a bigger cause, right? Mm-hmm. So does it really matter if you bought the cupcakes and didn't bake them yourself? Or does it really matter if you just didn't bring cupcakes, but you're going to throw a nice party when it's more convenient for your family. You know, like there has to be a balance and a judgment where a sound judgment where you say to yourself, I'm using wisdom. This matters, this doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, and always keep the cause and what God has put in your heart as a purpose to be fulfilled and bless your family in the process.
That was amazing. I mean, and I want to end on just one thing I want to say to all the moms out there who are mompreneurs, who are kingdompreneurs. God bless you. You do a heck of a lot, as the passage we read today.
For other women and your family.
Yeah, and for advancing God's kingdom and blessing other people in the process.
Yes.
And God bless you abundantly. We are very, very thankful, first of all, that you're listening to us, taking the time to listen to us, because we know time is a limited availability to kingdompreneurs. But we are also so very thankful for what you do every day, taking care of tomorrow's generation, and at the same time adding value to today's generation. This is just amazing.
Absolutely. So happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Be abundantly blessed.
And may you thrive on and be blessed.
Thanks for listening to the Thriving on Purpose podcast. Be sure to visit thrivingonpurpose.com to access the show notes and to discover more fantastic content. Until next time, be blessed and may you thrive on purpose.